Checking in, Johnny boy. My Ducati isn't going to pay for itself. When do you think you'll have that new song?
Before we get back to recording, we're going to talk about how different artists approach live performances versus studio recording.
If you want your recording to match a live performance, really the only way you should do that is to actually record it live. You can also set everything up and record your whole group playing it all once and get kind of that live feel too in the studio, but really you're going to get something different if you're not actually at a show. You got a different approach and you're going to get different results.
There are some songs that I would love to capture that rehearsal type of sound.
I'm very pop oriented, so I'm okay with the recording sounding totally different from the live version.
Very much use the studio as an added instrument that's not, we're only a quartet and we're all working overtime trying to sound a little bit larger than 4 pieces.
But as a band, we decided that we really wanted to capture a live sound on the album. So the album is us pretty much straight up live. If you hear Grupo Descarrilado on iTunes, on Spotify, it sounds the way we sound live because that's how we sound live. And we tried to keep very minimal overdubbing or minimal harmonizing.
Trying to sound like we're in the studio live. Alex has delay pedals we've worked through, and that is certainly emulating a 70s reggae dub approach that they were playing the studio. They were playing the board like an instrument and exhausting what effects they had available at their fingertips.
I love each time play different. That's why we are not machines.
We are very psychedelic and our ideas feed off of each other all the time, and we react a lot with the people, with the vibes of the place, and that's pretty much what Los Cumpleaños is for me.
And that's only going to happen that one time. And maybe if we knew we were being recorded, it would be a little more pressure on us and we wouldn't play the same way, because it has to do with the audience. So we might consider doing a live version of our songs or a live album at some point, just so that we can have that representation of us.
If you want to hear exactly the same, put play to the same album. But sometimes people they want it. Sometimes people they want exactly the same thing. So that's why there are cover bands that they want to do the same. Even when I do a cover, I want to do it so different.
I would say the idea of the speech is always the same, but the ways we say it vary from show to show. So I think we take the studio in the same way. It's another opportunity to see what happens there and create with that.
So when we record something in Alea's production, we are trying to keep some continuity of the idea. We don't want to record this so produced album.
It is sort of like the studio. We want to use the studio as an instrument, and then we want to emulate the studio live when we're playing.
And people enjoy the live music. Sounds live. Don't sound like recording. Sounds like a show. And this time has a different instrument, and this time maybe the singer changed the lyrics. But just that time, and you were testimony and participate of that.
Yeah.
So I'm totally pro difference between recording and live.
I enjoy being creative in the studio and doing things that you may not do live.
When you're doing it live, it's all right then, and you just keep going and you go with whatever happens. But when you're in the studio, you've got time to kind of think about it, take a step away, come back and add something new or change something.
Sometimes I really look for hi-fi sounds. I really look for that compressed, tight, feeling clear, transparent. But sometimes I really like the trashy recordings that we get out of rehearsals, for example. The way classical music was back in the day, or old recordings, you get the before the compression got into the mix. And sometimes I really want everything in the front all the time.
We had a great team with Greg Teves, our producer friend, and Eamon at the bridge.
Well, today we were recording here with my brothers, Los Primos, and it was a lot of fun. It was very challenging too, because we're a live band.
Like you're saying, we're a live band. We don't play to a click. We don't have tracks or samples or like anything like that. But once we got to the studio, we wanted to have flexibility and have a little bit more of a hand in the production of the songs and do something that we can't do live. And with Pisa Suave, that's what we were like, we can't do it with the click because we push in certain areas and it's very natural to do that, and then we pull in certain other areas. And
being able to capture that in a place where everything is like very like measured and you gotta like be on point, and that was a little challenging.
And so it was an opportunity to definitely take advantage of the studio, knowing that we were going to play solid basic tracks and then go in and put a lot of overdubs in there and maybe carve away a little bit too. Maybe sort of like overplay in some regards, knowing that we were going to take a producer's mind and cut out some sounds here and there.
When it comes to recording, I'm not married to a sound or to, I don't always look for the same thing. It like something needs to strike me, and the strike can come from any side.
There's sort of like the spotlight is being shown on these different textures at different times and kind of narrates this. It sort of influences the story, the way it's being narrated, I think.
When I first started out working with audio, I would use a whole bunch of different effects and do a whole bunch of different things to the sound to try and make it sound really great. And maybe part of that was to try and compensate for the fact that I was using like really cheap recording equipment.
It's very important to take your time when doing something, so you could, be specific about every detail in the song.
We actually asked ourselves, like the minute we were recording the first guitar for Alborota, we said, okay, do we want it to sound exactly like it's live, or are we gonna like super produce this? Like, what are we gonna do? We have to sound like what we have, and it's just gonna be 4 musicians, then it should be 4 instruments. And I said, yes, but we could add a few things.
We keep the size of the group small, but then everyone is double duty in some way. We're trying to have clean takes where we could focus on the rhythm and the groove and not have him singing in the same room where he's playing percussion. We'll spend a substantial amount of time we'll have at least probably 2 or 3 vocal days to have Nestor come in and redo everything, and then background vocals. And
the final product, that's what I'm very excited about.
I feel like all those answers, you kind of get them in the studio. It's like, because you don't know until you're like in the place facing the situation and you're like, oh man, this is not working or this is working. And having said that, I'm gonna like give you a couple of notes.
Mark and I have invited a surprise collaborator to help finish up our new track. Alea has been a regular guest on our shows, and I invited her to collaborate on this project. She wrote her own lyrics to our tune and sent me a sound sketch before we met up to record.
Quisiera verte, pero no puedo salir. Me atrapan los papeles que dicen no soy de aquí.
Now that that's done, I'm going to check out a live show at Bar Bez in Brooklyn. Los Cumpleaños are an experimental psychedelic cumbia band. While cumbia has gone through many iterations and transformations in the hands of artists from Pastor Lopez to more contemporary acts like Grupo Superté, Los Cumpleaños push further with jazzier solos and far-out sounds. Electronic cumbia tends to have its set vocabulary of synth sounds, and Los Cumpleaños expand way beyond this. Alex, Altaro, Eric, and Nestor are amazing. Follow Los Cumpleaños and go to their shows.